If you are confused at the name Defictionalization, don't worry. When I first typed it into my Word program, it refused to see it as a word, but to give it a summary, defictionalization is when something with base in fiction becomes real, and seen as media is such a broad subject, covering not only literature to video games. It is no surprise that at least some ideas within them become reality. There are quite a few examples, but let us start off with an example that will fill up quite a bit of this presentation. Star Trek. Now, when you hear the name Star Trek, you should at least recall the 2009 movie and how everything looked like an iPod, all sleek, shiny, and white, and with a bunch of lens flares everywhere. As many know, Star Trek is at least 50 years old by now, started all the way back in the 60s, and it had many strange technologies back then, in the 60s, that are slowly becoming more and more real today. Yes, this is incidentally spawned a meme called Star Trek Predicting the Future, as you can see right here. Yes, Star Trek has somehow ended up producing future products of the world and even shaping modern life with them. For example, there's a popular rumor that Morton Cooper, the inventor of the cell phone itself, claimed he only made the cell phone because he wanted his own communications device from Star Trek. In fact, this could be seen with the later model known as the StarTech Motorola phone. Yes, to say nothing of the fact that we also made tablets, or video communications, and let's not forget that weird eyepiece thing that incidentally has somehow ended up becoming the Google Glass in the future. But that's just from personal toys alone. We are actually working on some of the stranger things that should have some benefits for humanity, such as the serious technologies as the hypospray, aka a jet injector. In the show, this was a form of medical administration where it used high pressure to push the medicine through the skin instead of a needle, thus allowing for many people to get said cure administered without the risk of cross-contamination. This is sadly not reality yet, as we still have various issues to figure out and people are still getting hurt by it, but it's a neat idea, and it may help one day. It's in the dangerous category of being defictionalized for the time being. I could fill up a lot on the Star Trek technologies and even some of the stranger things, such as this, but I think we'd be here too long, so I'll leave off on Star Trek subjects with 3 more things. First, we are working on specialized 3D printers that can print food for the International Space Station, and in fact, Markerbot, a company, even calls their 3D printers replicators. So, replicators may become a thing one day, just when we figure out how to turn energy into programmed matter. Another thing we are working on is transparent aluminum. It exists somewhat as a substance known as Alon, which is transparent aluminum armor. I'm not too sure on the specifics of that, but who knows, it may become useful one day. And finally, for those of you still skeptical about some of the stranger things in Star Trek becoming real, I'd like to point out the Alcubierre drive, aka the warp drive. You may be thinking, we can't do that. We can't do that at all. That's impossible. Faster than light travel? Pfft, not possible. Actually, we are in fact working on it, and it's slowly getting there, but there's so much left to do. We still need to figure out power issues, we need antimatter, strange matter. The power alone would need to be the size of Jupiter. So, until we get that, it's not gonna happen. In fact, when we do have it, we might all be old men and women, just watching as the new generation takes off and finally reaches the stars. Now, to move on to the other things, let's cover a broad subject that has appeared in many works of fiction, and like I said, was predicted in Star Trek quite well. Video screen communication, like this, or this, or even this. And it's safe to say we have that. It's called Skype. No, seriously, we have video screen communication through the use of computers, the internet, and webcams. The future is now? Could it be truer? And the words of it being used for evil, that's another thing entirely with the NSA. I don't think we have to worry about too much of it, and it's certainly not being covered in this topic. But that does bring me to the next part. What about defictionalizing things that can be actively used to hurt people? Well, that is a very good question, and as we've seen, there is a lot in fiction that can be used in war and hurting people. For one thing, on the most passive of items is something called metamaterials, something that Japanese scientists are rumored to be making. It's best described as a cloaking device. Yes, a cloaking device. Don't get me wrong, it still be used to hurt people, but only by hiding said person that's going to hurt someone else. For the most part, it's just invisibility. Nothing too serious about that. I'd like to also cover drone warfare, but that'd be redundant as that's been discussed many times over, and this is about defictionalizing things that are slowly becoming real. Now you may be thinking, we've seen many homicidal robots in fiction. And I'd like to point out that before any of you think that Crush, Kill, Destroy, Clank is going to become a reality, it's not going to happen. Never. Nada. Zip. Zilch. The likelihood is beyond zero. And that's just because our own artificial intelligence systems aren't really that advanced. Even if robots were to rise up, most of them wouldn't be actively harmful. At most, the only ones that could do any harm were the ones made to hurt people. You know, like the Predator drone, or these bomb defusal robots. It's not really a big thing to worry about, and who's to say even the robots would rise up and try to hurt us anyway. But I'm getting off topic here. It's about as likely as a new particle being discovered when we invent clean fusion energy, and it turns out to be a basic radio scrambler, making drone warfare entirely pointless because we can't communicate with anything at long ranges. I'm sorry, where was I? Oh yes, and you may be wondering, if I claim that this is beyond unlikely, why am I bringing it up? Well, because we are in fact actually working on robots that can be used in military. So far they're relatively passive though, like Big Dog over here, whose primary purpose in life is to carry large, heavy loads over tough terrain with soldiers from point A to point B, which of course just means we can weaponize it. Think about it, an army of robot dogs the size of horses marching across the battlefields? The thing we are working on is powered exoskeletons. No, we're not going to be getting the Iron Man exoskeleton anytime soon. In fact, that's far away from what we could realistically make for years. This is far more likely. In fact, in the short term, we've already started work on that. We've got on this. The US has begun work, or even for medical purposes, thanks to a company known as Cyberdyne in Japan. They call it the HAL exoskeleton. It's used to help people walk again and lift heavy loads. If we could actually get one day the Iron Man armor, that'd be impressive, but again, that's years in the future, and we'd probably be all old men by then. But for those of you skeptical about why I'm even talking about military technologies being defictionalized, it's happened before. You may be thinking, that's not true, it's never happened before. Well, there was once a story written by H.G. Wells called The Land Ironclads, that were about these 100-foot-long iron vehicles with remote-controlled turrets and large wheels that carried soldiers, engineers, and captains onto the battlefield with improved protection against artillery fire and bullets. Now, just where have we heard that before? That should cover any doubts of yours, and I could go further into H.G. Wells predicting the future himself, what with laser technology and such. But I think we'd be here too long, and I'd have to say, it's not likely. But once more, defictionalization is the process where things that are fictional become real. We've had sillier things that have become real with no benefit or change to society. But ultimately, I'm hopeful for the future, and I'd like to see what you all think as well.